So I guess you barely finished high school.
Right, barely.
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 Your dad convinced you to join the Navy.
Well, a little more convinced. It was either you're going to leave here or you're going to go to the military. Which one? My odds were better in the military.
Okay, so you're in the military, and at this point, are you thinking like this is your career for the rest of your life? Like I'm going to keep working my way up in the Navy?
Well, no, I never thought that. I always thought that every day I'm going to be there is the day I'm going to get out. Because you could own in the military, part of me of having drive and seeing my parents kind of go all the way up to where they to achieve all the things they achieved. I always wanted to achieve more. But in the military, they give you a check and everything you have to do, you basically have to ask them for everything. Ask them to get married. So it was just too many rules and regulations for me. Now, it could be good for somebody else, but to say it wasn't really good for me in that respect. So I wanted to kind of get every day, I wanted to figure out how I was going to get out. But I guess, but then again, part two of me was like, I'm going to get out to do what? So it was of that struggle back and forth of, look, I can have a career here. I have some other family members that had a career, did 20 years. I was actually doing well in that respect. I already had tons and tons of medals from being at war and all that. So I could have stayed. I couldn't have stayed, but because of the accident. But in hindsight, if I would have stayed, I'm glad I didn't stay because, my future was much, much brighter being out.
Right. And you mentioned the accident. You ended up getting into an accident in a cab, right?
Yeah, car on base. And I wound up being halfway paralyzed. It was a slip disc, and then it was a swell disc in my back, and I couldn't move my legs. I had to go through therapy. Got to be able to walk again, and I have actually 50% disabled to date. I wake up with pain, but I live with it and keep it moving.
Okay, so you basically get an honorable discharge.
I get medical discharge.
Medical discharge. Okay, got it. So now you're out of the military.
Mm-hmm.
There goes your plan A.
Yeah. Now I'm like, what I'm gonna do now?
Plan B.
Right, plan B.
You go to FIT.
Right, so I go to FIT and I'm working at Macy's at the same time.
Right. FIT, for those that don't know, stands for Fashion Institute of Technology in New York City. And you're working at Macy's. And I guess at FIT, you reconnect with Daymond John?
Well, yeah. I reconnect with Daymond John. I went up going by his house. I'm home. I just got back. What's up? What's going on? And I remember like it was yesterday because I walk in. He had this little table in the kitchen, and we was all sitting there, and there was a hat sitting on the table, and I'm like, what's this? He's like, oh, it was a hat. I made a couple, sold a couple, kept it moving. Like, now I'm looking to pick out my next thing. I'm like, okay. Well, I'm looking at it closely, and I'm like, well, what's it mean? It says Fubu? How you spell Fubu? And I'm like, that sounds nice. What's that mean? And I was like, oh, well, what's that? What you doing with that? What are you doing? So I'm like, well, Fubu, I like it. All right, well, let me turn it into a clothing line. So he's looking like I got 4 heads and 6 arms, and I'm like, turn it into a clothing line. He's like, how could you turn it into a clothing line? Well, I'm going to FIT. I'm going to school. I could do this. He's like, okay, we don't have any money. I said, well, I got money. I had $6,000. I kept 1,000, bought some clothes, and gave him 5,000. The rest was history.
Okay, and these were tie top hats?
Tie top hats.
Which I think Tupac really popularized around that time.
Yeah.
You'd have the Thug Life, the tie top in the back.
Yep.
Stretch from Naughty by Nature probably wore those
Right.
well.
But like you said, it was in and out. So it's like, what's your next thing? It was really the next thing. And Daymond's funny because Daymond's the type of guy, look, he can figure it out. Like, he's going to make it happen. He's going to do hook or crook. He's going to, if it's selling mirrors, he used to sell mirrors. He sell all sorts of stuff. Whatever it is, he going to make it happen. So he was a shark back then. I was more creative, but he's a shark. He was going to make it happen.
Okay, so you guys are now considering launching this fashion line, but $5,000 ain't going to do it.
No, $5,000 not going to do it, but it's start.
Yeah.
So what we was doing is we would make a hat. We would go to a video set, put it on the video set, put it on somebody, take it back, or make a shirt, or take it back, and then we would, make a box of it. We'd sell it, and then we would take that proceeds, flip it, and that's just how we kept doing, flipping T-shirts, to the point where we placed it in a few shows and videos and stuff like that, and now all of a sudden we're getting some good advertising. We know LL, so I wound up. It's a funny story. I could tell you a story about LL. So LL used to be in a rap group.
Really?
Yeah, LL used to
Why
be in
did
a
I
rap
not know
group.
this? Okay.
Yeah, no one
What
knows
group
this.
was LL in?
I don't remember the name, but he was used to be in a rap group. So LL's best friend, which was in the rap group, his brother was my best friend.
Okay.
So we were in a rap group. So LL would come and try to teach us how to rap and stuff like that. So that's how LL became friends with us regarding, and helping us later on down the line as far as for Fubu was concerned.
Yep. And I'll get into that part as well. Didn't Daymond John mortgage his home for like
Yeah. So
$100,000?
Daymond mortgaged his house, right? We used that for another seed run.
Okay.
And because I wound up telling them, look, we got to go to this thing called the Magic Show.
Mm-hmm.
Once we went to the Magic Show, we got a whole bunch of orders, hundreds of $1,000s worth of orders. And I was like, yes. But then again, we have no way to produce it. So we started putting out, feelers in the newspaper for, people to come and finance it, stuff like that. And then was like, well, listen, why don't we just try to mortgage the house? And we mortgaged the house, took some of that money, used it, took some money to fix up the house. And from there on, we just kept going.
Right. So I guess you took the $100,000 out of the house and you guys started working out of the house itself, right?
Yes.
Half the house became
Half
Fubu.
the house. Right. So
Essentially.
I wouldn't pay rent per se because I was actually working the business. So Daymond was actually working at Red Lobster while I was working the business.
He was working at Red Lobster during that time. That's great. Okay, because before then you were working for Macy's, right?
Right. Correct.
And I guess there's a story about you quitting Macy's.
Yeah, that's a really crazy story. So, I'm very ambitious. I'm very hardworking. I used to work, if I could work 24 hours a day, I would, right? So in that case, I wanted to actually really be a buyer. So if this Fubu thing didn't work, I was going to be a buyer. I was going to be in fashion, hook or crook. I didn't care. So I wound up, I used to work for this tie department, right? And they used to have ties of like $100, $200, $300, sometimes even $500. So I would not necessarily be in charge of it, but I would be the one that everybody would come to get their suits put together, ties to get their shirts put together. So I would sometimes even have a line of people there waiting for me to kind of, style their clothing. So long story short, I got to, the head merchandise managers of the floor started looking. It's like, oh, who's this guy? Well, this guy is good. I tell him, hey, I wanted to be a buyer. So the manager there at the time, I don't know if I guess assuming that he didn't really like that, because it's like, what are you trying to do? Take over my job? And I'm like, look, bro, I'm just trying to make it and make my own way. So long story short, one day he comes in and says, I need to talk you through, come to the office. So he tells me, hey, listen, I found this tie and I think you was trying to steal it. And I'm like, bro, I'm not trying to steal nothing. Like, if I could steal something, I'm gonna steal $100, $200, $300 tie. I ain't gonna steal the tie that's on sale. It's $9.99 as it is on sale plus my discount. It'd been like $3.99. Why would I steal that? Like, it's just not making any logical sense. And he was like, well, I have to write you up. I said, if you write me up, I'm not gonna be able to get in the buyer's program. Please, look, I'm telling you, bro, I'm not trying to steal something. And he wrote me up anyway, and I quit. I said, the next time I come back in Macy's, I'm gonna be selling to you. And then I went all in into working with Fubu.
Okay, so you guys go to the Magic Show, you get a bunch of orders, like $300,000 worth of orders, right?
Mm-hmm.
So now you guys are trying to, make these orders and so forth. And I guess your mom suggested to advertise in the New York Times?
Actually, Daymond's mother suggested it. And also one of my friends has suggested it. So we were both kind of all thinking the same thing of why don't we just go, put an ad in the paper and maybe somebody would come in and, But again, we got a lot of shiesty people because, order purchase financing is really for sharks as well. So they want to come, they see blood in the water, or you need money for orders, and all of a sudden, it just didn't work out right. But there was one company that actually made a little bit of sense that we actually entertained, but we didn't work with them the first time. We started working with, we worked with them the second time they came back around when we worked with them, which was Samsung.
Okay, so Samsung is an electronics company.
Mm-hmm.
Why would they invest in a clothing company?
Well, they have a textile division, and basically they came
okay.
on as a distributor of us, and they was able to get us, because we had such a buzz at that time. We had LL, the hottest guy in America, probably even globally at that point, and it was just holding back the raids. Like, so we didn't really get it out to everybody, but everybody could see it, in videos and see it here and see it there, but they couldn't buy it. So when Samsung came in, they had distribution, warehousing, and they came in as that to where we can actually now distribute to everybody. And they had salesmen and all that. So we didn't have that. We just had us.
Yeah. Okay. How much money did they invest at that point?
Well, it's not necessarily mostly investing. It's more so just giving us the credit to be able to buy the goods, to be able to sell.
Got it.
Right.
Got it. And was it around that time that LL Cool J did the Gap commercial?
Yes, yes. And that really blew everything off.
Okay, so tell me about that commercial.
So that Gap commercial was the funniest thing ever. And actually it's in textbooks. It got us at museums, from 4 museums. So I salute L, and I appreciate that from day one for what he's done for us. And so basically, he came to us and said, hey, listen, I got a deal for Gap. Gap wants to come in. They was looking for a person to come in and make them cool. So he said, well, listen, I'm working with the company, but I'll do it, but I have to be able to wear my own stuff. And he would say, we're like, okay, nobody cares, because they figured, who's this little brand? They don't know any better, right? But L took it the next step. He didn't know or just wear a hat. He turned around and put it in the actual lyrics, which they didn't understand because, again, it's a cultural difference. You don't know what we're saying. You just know it sounds good because it rhymes, So he did that, and a couple of heads rolled after that. But again, they wound up airing it again because it was just that impactful and it helped them so much. So, 20 years, 20, 30 years later, I think that really they should come back to us and say, let's do it again.
So LL basically did a commercial for one clothing company and snuck in another clothing company in that same commercial and shouted out that smaller clothing company in the bigger clothing company's commercial that he's getting paid for.
That's getting paid for.
Genius.
I couldn't pay for that advertising.
No, you can't pay for that. So people got fired at the Gap over that?
I don't know if anybody got fired. I just think I don't think they got fired. I think that in the longer run, when you think about it, they wound up doing a really good job, but it's definitely a case study for everyone to see. It's definitely a case study at this point.
It's interesting how you fast forward 2022 and now Kanye's working with the Gap.
Right.
He's kind of like the first rapper, I think, since then that they've worked with again.
Exactly.
We'll get into that story later on.
Exactly.
Okay, so is that really what launched Fubu into? Between the Gap and Samsung, is that when it became kind of like a big,
I think
real
that
company?
Yes. That's when it really became a real company because at that point, we're just feeding ourselves hand to mouth. Like, we don't have distribution. We can't get it. We can't, if we get an order of 100,000 pieces, we can't fulfill it. So it just took us and made us an official company. Gave us an infrastructure. And a lot of times, as a small business, you don't have that infrastructure. You can't scale. And that aggregating gave us the ability to make us scale.
Got it.